Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast from the Building Podcast. Today, I'm honoured to have Michael Parinchy, who's a senior construction manager in the family business that is ProBuild 360. They're house builders within the West Midlands, and I'm looking forward to finding out some of the challenges about the market, particularly around planning, and understanding better about the supply chain and what role modern methods of construction plays within the construction of houses today. So, Michael, welcome to the Building Podcast,
Thank you for having me.
and looking forward to hearing what wisdom you can impart to everybody.
I'll try to.
Lovely. Well, let's start with a nice simple question. It's who are you? Let's find this out. I've done one introduction, but let me find out who you are, what you actually do, and what your business does, so that you can
Okay,
let the listeners know really understand what's going on.
no problem. So I'm Michael Parinchy and I'm the senior construction manager here at ProBuild 360. Um, I divide our work up into three sort of categories in my mind. So we do domestic, where the client is the homeowner. It's an existing property usually, possibly a single plot new build, but a lot of extensions, renovations, refurbishments, and that can be everything from Victorian mid terraces, quite small modest properties, up to Queen Anne style, beautiful private residences in Four Oaks, Sutton Coldfield, that sort of thing. Then we do main contracting. So, for example, we've got a conversion project in Coventry at the moment where we're turning an old bicycle factory into 24 apartments. Um, and then we do our own developments as well. So new build housing, mainly houses. We've done a few blocks of apartments, generally plot projects of the sort of size, 20 houses, that sort of thing. It's about the sort of right range for us. Um, but yeah, we've been going for I think it's 13 years officially, but the family and I have been in property and sort of construction in some way for probably more like 20 years. Um, and yeah, we're still going, and I think we've faced a lot of challenges over the last few years, like the whole industry has, and but we're still here, and I'm quite excited about the future.
Brilliant. Well, I can see all the awards behind you, Michael, so I know that you're doing very well.
Carefully
So let's
placed.
let's start off with sort of the very beginning of your business, and that's
Yeah.
really around the marketing and really understanding what your customers want.
Yeah.
So how do you get that relationship with those customers initially to understand what they actually need in their homes?
Well, so we actually have developed something that we call our build consultation. And this is specifically to do with domestic. So we tend to traditionally customers, homeowners, when they decide they're going to do some kind of work, they'll go to an architect first, which it's worked for decades, and we do that all the time because that is the way that the market generally operates. But we started to encourage people to, even if you do go to an architect first, include a consultation with a builder in the very, very earliest stages as you would with an architect. Because what we find is that the skills of a builder are complementary to that early consultation. And during that process, we ask really quite fundamental questions, like forget about how big's your extension and all that sort of stuff. We go back to what's driven you to this moment in your life where you've decided to do this. It could be, things to do with the family, if you've got elderly parents or children, you've a growing family. It could be something to do with lifestyle or whatever it might be, but we get right down into the fundamentals of understanding the client's objectives and their needs. And then when we've done that, we do a lot of things to do with sort of space planning, working out the flow, the lifestyle that they want to achieve, and that kind of thing, and then help develop the design work, but with a very practical, um, uh, real world focused approach. Whereas architects, not to disparage them in any way, we've got our own architectural practice, but it's generally a case of you take the brief and you draw up plans in line with the brief, and that's it. Um, and then submit a planning application and so on. But then bringing the sort of builder's perspective to it, often allows the design work to be right first time rather than going all the way down the road designing something and then you sort of go either there's challenges about the site itself or it's way out of budget for what you would have expected or something like that. So that's what we do, and generally what people want is high quality home that's I mean, sustainability is becoming quite well, it is a massive topic, but that's not so much sustainability in terms of low carbon footprint sort of thing. It's because people want energy security. So people are conscious about over reliance on, grid energy. So they're conscious of sort of well built. At the HBA, we promote a fabric first approach. So well built, good quality homes that work for them. Um, and yeah, that we try to get involved as early as we can in that process, if not from the very start.
Brilliant. Okay, so that's really getting down into sort of questions that most customers are not going to face
Yes,
when doing
absolutely.
those things. So it gives you a much better insight
Yeah,
into the reason why, which I think is fascinating.
yeah,
Um, let's come on to the next step, which I know with your HBA chairman hat on, you're heavily involved in is planning.
yes.
So talk to us a bit about some of the challenges you have in
Mm.
planning in dealing with the local authorities, because the local authorities have been struggling with resource in planning from across the country,
Oh God, yeah.
and the West Midlands is no different. So
Mhm.
so what are the issues and what are the answers you think to solving those ones?
So if so the words that get thrown around quite a lot when people are discussing it shorthand are that the system is broken, not fit for purpose, etc., etc., which sound quite dramatic, but I don't think in some cases I'd say it can feel like that. I'd say that there's a hell of a lot of policy and a lot of things that are being brought in that really I feel like that it's overly politicized. So whether it be biodiversity net gain or it be the affordable housing contributions or nutrient neutrality, these sorts of policies, the general, if you were to just discuss these things, at dinner with someone, we'd all agree what we want as the outcomes. So affordable housing, we want everyone to be able to get on the property ladder and that sort of thing. Biodiversity net gain, we want to make sure that our built environment is complementary to the natural environment and doesn't, overtake it and so on. We'd all agree on these things, but the reality of the policies by the time they take effect um, are very ridiculously bureaucratic. The biodiversity net gain spreadsheet and the calculations that are done, we call it the spreadsheet of doom because it's crazy how complex and strange, and they just don't seem to be actually focused on achieving the outcomes that it is purported to achieve. um so there's a lot of those things, and a phrase that I use quite a lot, particularly as a developer. So we're talking now about new build housing developments, apartment blocks and so on, is that the commercial viability is becoming suffocated. So by the time that you account for the costs of these various frameworks, these various policies, when they're all put on the shoulders of the developer, whether it be, SUDs and other infrastructure elements, it's like the commercial viability is just gone. It really is. And there's, when you're doing when you're calculating things like the benchmark land value and the alternative land use value and things like that, it starts to become quite apparent that there's nothing here. There's nothing left. And it really begins to, and when you add that to the length of time, as you say, that we do sympathise with the local authorities, the planning departments, in terms of their lack of resources and expertise and so on and so forth. That the length of time, the administration of an application, it just becomes an unfeasible exercise. We see house builders stopping house building quite a lot these days and focusing on rental portfolios, that sort of thing, just because it's too much, which is a shame because um, we love what we do. I think most house builders, you have to love what you do to be in construction. Um, but if you want to know a quick version of what my opinion on the solution would be, it would be to go back to basics, take out the bureaucracy, take out the sort of, it needs to be more cohesive. So when someone's writing a policy like a net zero policy or a biodiversity policy, and then there's another person from a committee somewhere that's imposing the affordable housing policy, these things need to be looked at holistically. So how would a hypothetical application be able to carry those burdens, or would it? Whereas I think it's just like, do you remember that game Buckaroo, where you keep putting things on the donkey until it just bucks and kicks it all off? So yeah, that's what I would say.
I've never heard local planning processes being described as buckaroo, but
Yeah.
I know exactly where you're at. At some stage, to give you another analogy, the last straw on the camel will break its back.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I think we all accept that planning has to be, that we have to have the local community involved in planning to dictate where and how we build.
Oh,
But
gotcha.
clearly, I think one of my concerns is the amount we have to do at risk trying to go through planning,
Yes, huge amount. Yeah.
when actually we could commute a lot of what you're describing down to the other side of planning,
Yeah.
to see where it gets to.
Yeah.
And do you have a view as to sort of, how quickly what time that would reduce going through planning? I mean, I don't know what's your average planning process at the moment. How long does that take?
So as quite a small company, it's not like I've got a huge data set, like lots of planning applications. I've got 3 in at the moment, 2 of which are residential. One of which has only recently been put in, so I'll put that to one side and I'll use the last one as my example. It's a development in Leamington Spa, and it has been in planning for um must be coming up to 2 years for this application. Yeah. And here's the thing: when I talk about that with the other members of the board at the HBA, they laugh at me like that's nothing.
Yeah,
I've
no.
heard things like 7 years, 8 years, and stuff for some projects, but 2 years in planning, that's forgetting about the part before planning where we had the acquisition
Yeah.
was probably not far off 3.5 years ago from now. So it's a long, long time. It's a site of 10 houses, you know. It's surrounded by developments that are complete, they're in occupation phase by the nationals. Um, and it's 1 acre that's left. It's a little parcel of land, and it would just finish off the development of that area nicely. But you almost feel like if a case officer from the planning department could just look at it, just take a step back and look at it in that regard, like I've just explained it, like it's one small development of 10 houses that would just finish off the development of this area nicely. Let's get it approved quickly and efficiently so we can get on. You can use planning conditions. You've got tools to hold us to account on things like boundary treatments and those sorts of things. We'll play the game. We'll play ball, but let's get them approved so that we can get shovels in the ground and get going.
Mm.
So yeah, that's sort of an anecdote from our experience.
I mean, a 2 year delay is effectively a 2 year delay on economic activity,
Of course,
and
yeah.
is just, it's what some people call fiscal drag, isn't it? So it's
Yes,
just,
it is.
you just get the costs keep going out
Well, on
and
that
entirely at risk.
on that particular site, you talk about risk. Uh, we've had, I think, 3 occasions now. I've been out. One time was in the middle of the night. I'm talking like 1 o'clock in the morning to the police and fire engines, because the local kids have been, it's an old farmhouse. The kids from the local houses have been in there and set fires. So we've been called out, and that's happened like I think 3 times in the space of like a month. It's stopped now because we've put some pretty serious control measures in terms of security. But um, yeah, it's a massive risk, not just to us, but the local residents.
Yeah.
You know,
And I don't
so
suppose that security was in your initial appraisal either.
no, I'm sure it wasn't.
So what, in your view, if you take that just one example, Michael, what do you
Yeah.
think is the main cause to the delay in that? Why isn't that getting processed?
Okay.
Even for a negative, assessment, you just want something, don't you?
Yeah. So I'll give you something that pops to mind. When there's a change, so let's say the acoustics officer, the person looking at the acoustics from the local authority side, says, "I'd like to. I think this window is going to have a problem with acoustics, and I'd like a design change um, that makes it, a non-openable window, whatever it might be. There's a small change. We have to then go through an entire round of consultation on all the validation items again because of one small change, rather than just having a list of items and saying, okay, tick that one's done, tick that one's done. It's always for some, and I don't think there's an administrative rule or anything in place for this. I think it's just the way it is being administered, is that with one small change here, it may affect something over here in a different validation item. So that, like, you end up with 3 or 4 different things having a change, and they go, right, it's a full new round of consultation. And by the time you've got the changes made by your consultants, submitted each of those, waited for all of those things to be reconsulted on, and have all the responses in place, which may not all be positive,
Mm.
each round can be 3 months or more.
Yeah, yeah,
So it adds up. It really, really adds up. Whereas I think there'd be a much more efficient way to do it. Like, a change is an isolated change. Let's just tick things off as we go until everything's ticked off. And there is one more thing that springs to mind. A little frustration that I had on this particular application is that we were working through the design work and working through the application, and we had got through to very specific, very refined detail items, like what species of grass will there be over here, and a little, boundary treatment stuff and so on. Only then, for this was after about a year of the application being in, for the case officer to say, we've decided that we have a fundamental problem with the size of some of the houses. They were actually too. They actually said they were too big, which I was like, well, first of all, there's no guidance to say they can't be bigger than normal. I can understand if they were too small. Obviously, there's minimum, floor space requirements, but too big, it was unusual. But then, because they wanted those changes, those are fundamental changes, like to the scheme, the layouts of the site, which then required recalculation of the biodiversity net gain, which required a re-evaluation of the acoustics, the ventilation, and the overheating, and everything needed redoing. So for me, it would be a case of being much more logical and saying, you iron out the fundamentals, i.e., how many houses, how big are they, and the where's the road into the site, and the basic stuff, until that is absolutely agreed on. And then you can work through the more high resolution items and tick them off as you go again. But if you change something fundamental at a late stage, all those high resolution things need redoing. So it's an illogical and unusually long-winded way to do things.
yeah. And I think I get very worried about the cost
Yeah.
for doing that
Yeah,
when
well, each
when
change is
margins are squeezed anyway.
yeah, each change is another fee for a consultant, which, we've got great consultants, but they all need paying.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, the other thing I know that ProBuild's very proud of is its role of innovation in its
Yeah,
service. And innovation in the construction industry is that there's plenty of it, but it's getting it out into the market is always a challenge. So
yeah.
what's your secret to getting your innovations out and into the market?
So, for us, innovation is it's a mindset rather than when people think of innovation, they particularly think of like modern methods of construction, new technologies, high tech stuff like site monitoring with AI and all these kind of things, all very tech based things, manufacturing that sort of stuff. But one example of innovation for us has been actually nothing really to do with construction per se, but rather to do with communications. So on the domestic side, we um, we recognised quite a long time ago that the market is very driven by new build, by development, and that the domestic market is quite stagnant. And we through our experience realized that what the reason for that is that people have quite a negative view generally of domestic builders. They sort of think of them as like cheap car mechanics and just roughneck sort of people with a van, no office, and what that sort of thing. And our business is a response to that in part. So we decided that if we were to start showcasing what a good domestic builder looks like, through some good long form video content online, but YouTube channel, that sort of thing, through podcast discussions like we're having now, that sort of stuff, particularly aimed at the domestic market. We could, number one, empower the consumer, so give them a real insight into this is how it all works. So they don't feel so scared. They feel like they've had some experience, even if it wasn't their project. They've been able to watch, this is the order that things go in. We can demystify some of the jargon that they're going to be hearing and that sort of thing. And sort of elevate the spirit a bit within the domestic market. So we've done that. And for me, that was pure innovation because there's no one else in the domestic market that's doing something like that, particularly not for those reasons. So that's one thing. And to answer your question, getting that out has not been difficult really because no one's doing it. So the success of that will reveal itself as we continue to do it. In terms of more, um, what should we call it? Hardware based innovation, hard innovation. We're developing a online portal for homeowners to manage their day-to-day home ownership, so things like bills and planning applications, and to be able to contact construction professionals and that sort of stuff. There's just a bit of a hub for homeowners that's a bit more tech based, and we're quite excited about that one. Um, I don't think we're quite the size of company that can quite get into innovations in manufacturing and that sort of stuff just yet. But I will say one good route for anyone that is trying to get it or has something innovative that they might not be able to accomplish by themselves is something called knowledge transfer partnerships. Do you know about these?
KTPs, yes.
KTPs, right. So KTPs are, for your audience, are a framework whereby a business comes together with a university and you collaborate on delivering a project that the university wouldn't be able to do without the business experience of the company, and the business probably wouldn't be able to do themselves without the academic research of the university. And it's backed and funded by the Department of Business through Innovate UK. I've got two of them on at the moment. It's unbelievable. I cannot recommend them enough. So that's one way that I would take something to market if I couldn't do it myself.
Yeah. Now, and the the work you're doing with the university, it's changed out of all recognition over the last 20 years. It's 20 years ago, universities were really difficult to work with.
Yes.
But initiatives like the KTP that you're talking about there have really made universities far more accessible to the SME sector.
Yeah.
Which and I love the SME sector because it's where we can innovate and we can get on with it. We don't have too many.
Yeah.
The decisions can be taken like that, and off we go. And
yeah, exactly.
You see an opportunity, and those are the ones that are going to be successful because the people who dream them up will make sure they work.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit more hungry, We're dreamers in the SME
well, we're going to
sector.
solve the problems, haven't we? We see the problems, we need to get to solve them.
Yeah,
it's really interesting. Michael, the other thing I think's great about ProBuild is that you've tried to go vertically integrated. So how do you interact with the supply chain you've got, or how do you decide whether to go out for something or try and do it in-house?
So generally, our rule would be if we offer a service in-house, we do it. So the first port of call in terms of that vertically integrated model was the workforce, tradesmen and engineers. So from plumbing and heating to electrics, carpentry, groundworks, bricklaying, roofing, everything like that, plasterers and all the internal finishing. We integrated all of that workforce. So all those guys are full-time ProBuild guys, and we can build a house with just our guys. So that was the first thing. And the only things that we would go out for on construction phase really would be specialist items. If you've got something like I don't know, like a spa, like a swim spa, that sort of thing, or some very bespoke ironmongery for like an electric gate or something that's needs manufacturing in a workshop, those sorts of things. So but the general rule for us is if we can deliver it, we will deliver it in-house. And just try to it's not just about us integrating for our benefit, it's about integrating for the benefit of the project and delivery of the project, because the less fragmented it is, the more efficient it is, and the smoother the whole process is. So that's what we try to do. And as I mentioned to you before we were recording, we have the architectural practice, the interior design studio, the supply chain for all the products for kitchens, bedrooms, bathrooms, as well as some of the external finishes as well. So finishing products. The last thing that we want is our directors want a builder's merchant as well, and then we'll have all the construction materials, and that would be the last link in the chain. But we may get there one day.
We may get there. So Michael, I mean, the challenge that the industry struggles with is how you deal with volumes that move. So keeping your people busy, and I know from experience myself that it's great to have these people on the books, but when times are lean, it is a challenge finding work for them. So how do you cope with that?
Well, I'll go back to how we started the conversation. We have, I can't take credit, the directors have calculated that if we keep a foot in each of these areas, being domestic, main contracting, and our own developments, wherever's picking up, you can focus on. Whereas I think that, I mean, you look at a company like ISG, only this weekend have been announced as going under, unfortunately. So sad. But they're very specific. They're a prison builder. So if that's not happening and your margins are cut to the bone, you're going to hit a brick wall at some point. Whereas diversifying the portfolio in terms of the range of activities that you're involved in, I think is the best way. And yes, even for a smaller company like us with a broad range of activities, even for us, it's quite difficult, which is why you don't really see it. Like, people aren't doing it the way that we are. It's very difficult.
And the other thing which you'll be well aware of is, if you're going to continue to provide the quality on site and the houses, how important is training and making sure you've got competent people on the books for this for the work
Yeah.
you're doing?
So obviously, everyone knows that the industry is facing a skills shortage, and everyone's concerned whether the next generation have the desire to be tradesmen and craftsmen in the way that the last couple of generations have been. We First of all, to answer your question, it's hugely important. We are constantly upskilling. As a member of the Chartered Institute of Builders, I'm always looking on within that organization to help us with upskilling our existing workforce and so on. Obviously, using the CITB where we can and that sort of stuff. We also take on apprentices as much as we possibly can. Whatever capacity we have for that, we make sure that we're using that capacity. And it's quite successful. I mean, we have probably four, maybe five people in the organization now that are the children of people that have been with us for 5, 10 years. So multi-generational employment, which is quite exciting for a small company like ours. It's quite emblematic of getting something right in terms of having that social mobility isn't necessarily the right term, but the employment equivalent of social mobility. Like, people are always moving up through the ranks and upskilling and learning, new ways to do things and so on. Yeah, you got to keep
Absolutely
going.
right. If you've got two generations, it won't be long before you've got three generations
Well,
if
I
you've
hope
really got it
so.
right.
Yeah, I hope
That's
so.
how it works. And Michael, who sets the standard for that quality? Because I know that quite a lot of construction work, people claim that they've done things to the right standard,
Yeah.
but invariably, we all know, we hear from quite a lot of house builders have got problems with quality on site.
Oh, gotcha.
Um,
I used,
who sets their standards? Who sets your standards?
I mean, I used to work. I spent several years with the national level house builders, so I know what not good quality looks like. Um, not having a go or anything like that. At the end of the day, when you're working at that volume, there are going to be little blind spots. But for us, um, it's difficult to say who sets those standards. I mean, our family sort of before mum was in construction, she was in fashion retail. And has both mum and dad have a very, very keen eye for aesthetics and design and that sort of stuff. So that's bled through into our construction business. Um, I'd say I mean, our contracts managers are ex-military, most of them. So they have very high expectations for not just sort of discipline and professionalism, but also for the standard of the work itself. Um, I think what we've done is to create a brand whereby people expect a very high level of quality. So we're quite visual and we're quite active on social media, and everyone is constantly seeing our work. And because of that, I just don't think anyone can stick around if their work is not something that they're proud of. Um, so yeah, I think it's quite a natural thing. It's not like someone is there. So when I was at the some of the big national house builders, you'd have a Bible for what your tolerances were in terms of how plumb a wall or a door frame is and these sorts of things. So we'd be walking around as a site manager, as I was then, just checking against tolerances as best you can. You can't hit every single unit, but as best you can. But with us, it's kind of it's set each member of the organization sets the standard for quality themselves, and if they're not if their standard for themselves is not high enough, they just don't quite fit our company, and they'll move on, hopefully amicably. So yeah, it's more of a natural thing to do with the brand and the company itself.
Brilliant. It sounds like, the pride in job for working in the business that does it all is, as you say, keeps everything in house. People are far more approachable, or far
Yeah,
easier to get that
yeah,
quality and burn.
yeah,
Michael, I'll give you you're chairing the House Building Association within the National Federation of Builders. It'd be remiss of me not to ask you what you see that part of the organisation doing, and where you see the focus and the value add you're giving to your members. I think that's
yeah.
both. It'd be interesting to know on your view on both those.
Well, so I've been working with the guys on the board of the HBA for quite a few years, and I think I've been the chair for a bit over a year, maybe 18 months, something like that. Rico would have to correct me if I'm wrong. But the the members are just absolutely it's a privilege to get to listen to them at one of the quarterly meetings. Just being a fly on the wall would be enough of a privilege, because they're so experienced and knowledgeable about the industry, not just about how to build houses, put one brick on top of another, plonk a roof on top. It just even down to things like the adoption of local plans by the local authorities, or I could have a very specific problem with the planning application, and I'll mention it at a meeting, and the guys will be like, do you know what? There's a policy that way deep down in the small print that you'll never have heard of. I've dealt with this before. Here's the key to unlocking that. So I think that for our members, what I would encourage is that any member is not just a member in name only, and just has it to be able to have the badge, on the vans, or on the website or something like that, to actually use us, write to us, talk to us, pick up the phone to us, and we'll help where we can, because we learn from the more experience that we're hearing about. Enables us to get the best picture of what the real problems are, what solutions there are to those problems, and vocalize those to local government and to central government whenever we can. Really, what we're supposed to be is the voice of SME house builders. And I mean, like I say, the people on the board are much more long in the tooth than I am, and I learn so much from them all the time. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah.
It is.
So Michael, it sounds like a sort of self-help group
It
to,
is.
to, to, a, to a large
It's a
extent,
therapy group. Yeah.
but also I think the advocacy that you provide to central government and to local authorities in particular is
Yeah.
invaluable in trying to solve some of the problems that we've talked about today in terms of
Yeah.
planning and
We have to take our hat off to Rico in that regard. He just there's no one as hard working in the area of sort of policy making than Rico. He knows it. Going back 50 years worth of policies, he knows it inside out, like the back of his hand. And he whatever the subject is, he's got an answer for you, and he's constantly communicating and knocking on that door. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Michael, with that call for action to join the HBA within the NFB, I'm going to say thank you very much.
Thank
It's
you.
been a privilege talking to you. I think it's the role of the SME house builder is vastly overlooked, and if this government's going to get to 300,000 units a year, then it's organisations like yours across the country that are going to have to step up
so.
the mark.
I hope so.
To
We
make a difference.
used to build 39% of new units back in like the mid 80s. SME house builders, that is, down to about 8 or 9%, something like that. So yeah, hopefully we can revitalize that.
We've got to find a way of reversing it, haven't we? That's
Yeah.
that's how it's going to happen. But thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Look forward to seeing you soon.
Appreciate it. Bye bye.
Brilliant.